Hi, I'm Haley, and I'm going to talk about professional writing, specifically editing and grant writing careers, which are my interest in this field. So professional writing is a very broad career field with lots of variations. It can be remote or on-site. A writer could be an employee of one company or freelancer, and professional writers contribute to lots of different kinds of works, magazines, journals, books, and manuscripts, and they can contribute in lots of different ways, including editing, journalism, grant writing, and copywriting. So to start, I'm going to do an overview of editing because there's several different types that you can be employed to do. So the first type is going to be line editing, which is what you think of when you hear the term editor. This is someone who evaluates written works for style, structure, and content, and they would correct for things like run-on sentences, wordy passages, and confusing wording. The second type is proofreading, which corrects grammatical errors and other details in a work's formatting. The third type is copy editing, which is a more in-depth proofread, which checks for grammar errors as well as internal consistency in style and content, like if a character in a manuscript has one color of hair and then 2 pages later the writer says they have a different color of hair. For a overview of grant writing, it's mostly thought of with nonprofits like Habitat for Humanity or the Rescue Mission, to give some local examples. It also can be associated with other types of organizations as well, like Practical Health, however. The term grant writing describes the job of applying for funding for an organization from lots of different sources, like community foundations, individual donors, and government organizations. Applications can be online forms that you fill out and add documents to, or they can also be portfolios that you're compiling with paper documents, and in either case the documents would be tax documents, numbers for your organization, and different technical things. And then there's also a narrative element of each grant about what the organization does and the stories of people that they've helped. A grant writer is a big part of any organization because funding that they can bring in can help keep the organization operating and helping those who need it, as well as increasing their ability to do so in the future with more funding. So the main points of this project are to give practical editing and grant writing information to my fellow English majors who want to write for a living, to give them ideas on what their future careers may look like. And then another goal would be showing that editing and grant writing can actually be done and as a job, and they can provide livable wages, and they're not just a path to retail, which is what a lot of people think of when they hear the term English major. A job like nursing has a different connotation because people have more of an idea what you'll be doing, and it's pretty straightforward, but English gets some skepticism. And I asked a couple questions in this paper, turned into a presentation. The first one was about editing, where you can work as an editor. So if someone interested in editing, I was looking to see if they could how freelancing would work and setting their own rates and working for one company. They can also pick what they could edit as well. So the other question was what a grant writer does from day to day. And they do a variety of different things, so I wanted to see what they spend their most time on and look at how long those tasks took. And then the last question was about how much an editor or grant writer could make. So I focused on the range of income from some business sites that I found. So starting with employment for editing, my research focused on remote and online editing instead of in person. So for online editing, I found a site called Scriber that hires editors from all over the world to edit in their own languages. These editors pass a language and editing test and then have a month of training before they receive projects that they can say yes or no to. Their projects would have a mix of line and copy editing as well as proofreading, depending on the depth of service that they were paid to do. They have a basic level and then up to 5 levels of increasing intensity of editing, and they could edit academic works like dissertations. And for this type of work, it'd be $25 an hour, which is about $50,000 for full-time. You could also do a more individual freelancing approach, as seen on this editor portfolio that showed the editor had edited for lots of different magazines like AI Magazine, the Hilton Magazine, and a Google Magazine. And editors of journals like this can make around $17.75 an hour, which for 13 hours a week is $12,000 a year. I also found a different employment option where a court transcript editor, which is someone who has court transcripts sent to their house, and then they edit them, in this case on an iPad with the person I found, and she sends them back to the person who sent it to her on her iPad also, and she charges 40 cents a page, and she can do 100 pages per hour and 400 to 600 a day, which is $240 per day, and this adds up with a 5-day work week to $40,000 a year. So moving on to grant writing, it's kind of an unknown concept for some people, so I'm trying to show what you would actually do as one. In the site GrantStation, which is a site that you can research grants on, I found a report that they did on how long different things took for grant writers, which was done through a survey. One question asked about how long the grant cycle was, which is the time between the submission of a grant and then the finding out about a decision on funding. And 63% said it was 1 to 6 months, and as you can see, there's about an equal amount saying 30% of 1 to 3 months and 30% 4 to 6 months. And then 14% did say it took 10 to 12 months, however. Another question asked about the actual writing, and there was a variety of different responses on this. A quarter said 2 to 3 days, another quarter said 1 to 2 weeks, 18% said 4 to 5 days, and then 12% said 1 day or less. So I did interview a local grant writer, and she gave me her grant writing process for me to kind of look at. So here's an example of a process. She starts with finding a grant, either herself or through other people, and then she writes a letter of intent, or LOI, which is a brief summary of the organization mission and what the grant would look like if she got accepted to submit a grant. And then if she's given the go-ahead, then she looks over the grant first to see what documents she needs from other people in her organization, as far as tax documents, different numbers of services tracked, and then she sits down and writes the narrative for the grant and adds stories, the people they've helped, and different things like that. And then she sends it to her supervisor, who reviews it, and then she edits it based on her supervisor's thoughts. After this, she submits the grant, and then usually waits a couple months to hear back from that. And if she does get the grant money, she immediately writes down the reporting dates for this grant, which are basically progress reports about what they did with the money and how it's been used. And then she starts the process for another grant. So as far as how much a grant writer could make, the average salary of a grant writer, according to ZipRecruiter, is $55,000 a year, as you can see in this table here, and $27 an hour. So the salaries range from $20,500 on the left-hand side to $86,500 on the right hand. And most of them are between the $45,000 to $60,000 a year range, as you can see by those two bars in the center. The average grant writing salary in Fort Wayne is $52,000 a year, which lines up with what the grant writer I interviewed said. In her experience, it was $50,000 to $60,000. She also said that if a grant writer chooses to freelance, which would be writing grants for lots of organizations, they could charge around $25 to $100 an hour. So to wrap up, there are a variety of good options in professional writing, even just in the editing and grant writing fields. You could freelance as an editor individually or work for a company with editing and make anywhere from $12,000 to $50,000 a year. And as far as grant writing goes, there's a mixture of the head and heart in the actual tasks of grant writing, as you focus on your writing skills as well as helping people by applying for funding. And you can definitely have a good salary here too, at around $50,000 a year, with room for growth as well as you add value to your position. So there's definitely a lot of viable career options in the professional writing field.